All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles Nyabeze, and I'm the Vice President, Business Development and Commercialization with the Center for Excellence in Mining Innovation. And today, I'm pleased to be hosting this Beyond Digital Transformation panel, which will be discussing how to access operational data to improve decision making. Again, welcome, everyone. Beyond Digital Transformation, also known as BDT 2023, is a platform for results-driven mining professionals who want to deploy systems that deliver measurable impacts for their mining operations. Each stream brings together unique mining perspectives. In today's session, we are going to welcome Mike and Greg to the presentation. And what I'm going to do is just maybe turn it over to Mike and Greg and have them introduce themselves. So Mike, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Jankowski. I work with Hudbay Minerals based out of Toronto. And my job title is the Manager of Technology Development. But basically what I do is I need to stay in touch with the business to understand its needs. I find things that either benefit us from profit, safety, or efficiency perspectives. And the areas in which I dabble are with technology, with digitization of the business, and leveraging data, as well as continual improvement. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Greg, please go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Greg Sandbloom. I work for Glencore Canada in Sudbury Integrated Nickel Operations. Like Mike, I'm in operation technology, and really the focus for us is to get ready for our new underground mine in Onaping Depth, which is a deep mine with a lot of challenges, but same thing, digitalization, ensuring we have the plan, do, check, act cycle running well, and integrating the new technology into the mine that we need to operate effectively.
Thank you. All right, welcome Mike and welcome Greg. So this is our fourth panel discussion on Beyond Digital Transformation, Connectivity and Communication Stream. Session 1 explored general challenges and opportunities in connectivity in a remote-first mining environment, and from two perspectives, working remotely from the mine site and working remotely in the field while on the mine site. That was the second perspective. The third round, how we can access data in a reliable manner. And today, we're privileged to have these two distinguished panelists with unique views to dig into the details, leveraging operations data to improve decision-making. So to kick things off, I wanted just to pull something that I found on OpenAI through their chat, their platform, the ChatGPT. And I asked OpenAI, what are the sort of 8 ways of leveraging operations data to improve decision-making? So I'm going to just read off the titles of the different areas that this AI sent back to me. So number 1 was utilizing real-time monitoring to track performance metrics. Number 2, use data visualization to identify performance trends. Establish automated alerts for abnormal conditions. That was number 3. Number 4, analyze logs for root cause analysis. And 5, establish continuous delivery pipelines. 6, utilize machine learning to identify anomalies. And 7, implement predictive analytics to enhance forecasting. And the 8th one was test infrastructure for resilience. But coming back to this presentation, I want to kick things off by asking our panelists, what does operations data mean to you? So maybe we'll ask Greg to go first. What does operations data mean to you? Go ahead, Greg.
So operations data, I think traditionally people think of operations data being the sensor type data, the telemetry data coming off equipment, maybe location tracking data, and it is all of that, and how we use that to enhance decision making. But it's not only that; it includes data that we receive from our employees through mobile apps. It includes, finding those collaborative tools to be able to communicate effectively from the face of the mine back up to surface, and doing it in a way that that leads to decision making, bidirectional decision making between operators, between shifters, between GFs on surface and engineering.
Thank you for that. Mike, please go ahead. Same question.
I like Greg's answer, and also I try to keep things simple. And to me, it's quite simply data generated while executing our mining or milling processes that are used to help make decisions. So I agree, it could be things beyond that which is generated by instrumentation could be collection of digital forms filled out by employees, etc. But
Thank you
keep
for
it
that,
simple.
guys. Awesome. And for those of you who may be wondering, what is the definition of beyond digital transformation? And one definition that we have here is that it all comes back to making decisions sooner, safer, better with data. So that's sort of the definition for beyond digital transformation. So the next question that I have for you is, what initiatives are in place to make operational data actionable by users? What initiatives are in place to make operational data actionable by users, maybe even in different roles and locations? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, well, because you discussed this in earlier sessions, I won't get into the infrastructure, but that's definitely the first initiative in place to make it present. But we have a care and control process that we wrap around our mining processes, which we call short interval control in the industry. So that is the primary or the first kind of significant use of that data that we implemented. And it requires beneath it a control and response program to identify triggers. And some more current stuff that's work in progress for us is decompressing the organizational focus by implementing layered reviews and management operating system to review that on a periodic basis. I'll get into that more later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Greg, please go ahead.
Yeah, to follow up on that, our innovation program over the last number of years from a digitalization side has really focused on work management. So work management takes us away from that short interval control and trying to make those in-shift adjustments to ensuring that we have proper plans that lead into good short-term schedules, and that is communicated through priorities to the shifters and the operators underground. And we've made some really good progress at our nickel rim mine with digital work management, and that for us is how it's become actionable. And now that we, the goal of digital work management is to become reliable in our operations and to be able to become more effective in meeting our production targets. And the next stage for us, as we go and proceed to implement our Onaping depth mine, is to get to the point where we're using short interval control and we're using in-shift management and using the data that's derived from digital work management, our equipment, from our apps underground to actually help the decision making of our miners, of our shifters, and collaboratively with our GFs and our engineering department to ensure we deliver the shift is really the ultimate goal, is to plan out the shift correctly, schedule it, line it up, and ultimately deliver it. So as we go forward, those are the actionable items that we want to get to, is using that data within the shift to deliver that shift.
Okay, so just digging a little bit deeper on the short interval control, how does operations data enable short interval control? And also, what are some of those key areas impacted by data utilization for short interval control? Maybe Mike, you can take that first. Oh, Greg, go ahead. I see you answering already.
Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead. So for us, one of the key areas is to ensure that we have effective communication of the mine status throughout the shift. So as we experience delays, as we experience equipment issues, that we have the collaborative tools that people at the face can easily communicate back to maintenance, back to their shifter, back to GFs, so that collaboratively we can come up with a plan to adjust our shift, to have in-shift workplace substitutions, those kind of things. So from a digital work management perspective, that's the first area that we want to get to, is providing those collaborative tools, not having the operators and the shifters have manual applications or radio communications back to surface. That all the status of the workplaces, whether it's development mining or production mining, that information comes off the equipment where available, comes off the location tracking where available, so that as the shift progresses, everybody's clear on that it's progressing according to the plan. And if it's not, then how can everybody help get us back on plan for the day?
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Over to you, Mike.
For us, like as Greg mentioned, it depends what you want short interval control to achieve for your company. For us, we have the interactive management of the current shift and being able to recognize issues sooner and to be able to respond sooner with better information is a goal, but also on the longer term side of things, we also want to collect information for continual improvement. So on the interactive side, operations data fills for us our control response program, which is where we take a task, and if it was 20% or more below target, then a specific role is accountable to ensure that a root cause is discovered for that. And we don't just focus on the negative; we also focus on the positive. So when we're 20% or more above target, we'll also document a root cause for that. And which areas to apply this Karen control to? I call short interval control a Karen control. It differs by company. It depends on your process maturity and where your bottleneck and your tertiary constraints exist in the business. For us, it began with an assessment to look at the maturity of each process and determine those bottlenecks and constraints. And the surprise there is that we didn't necessarily want to address the bottleneck first, because we knew if we addressed that, it would cause other issues downstream. So to me, to conduct an assessment is where you start, and that's how you understand where you need to apply a short interval control. And from there, then how data is going to enable that.
Awesome. Thank you for that. The next question really speaks about work, skills, and new jobs. So what new work is enabled by having access to operational data, or operations data? And maybe another way to look at it is the utilization of operational data demanding new skills, and is it creating new jobs?
Go ahead, Mike.
On the operations side of things, certainly new work would be around, I would say, our continual improvement roadmap. To have a start from an assessment, you typically come up with about a year's worth of work, somewhere around there. But what to do next depends on a plug into the existing operational data. And for us, short interval control is providing a feed with Pareto charts and such to inform our continual improvement roadmap. In terms of skills and jobs in the industry, I think it's emphasizing jobs that are kind of already there. And you're seeing some people move from manufacturing into mining because manufacturing has done similar things. But some of the roles I can think of is like a data governance perspective. Most mining companies sorely lack a data governance program, and you're setting yourself up for a difficult time because your systems won't necessarily speak to each other. It can be something as simple as date formats, or how you describe your business unit. But many mining companies are still kind of stuck in point-to-point data integration. They lack a central layer that gives you an ongoing monitor of the performance. So you really need to put that stuff on automatic pilot in terms of being able to detect and resolve issues. So you need a fairly modern integration infrastructure. But to me, the biggest is in people change management and the interaction between supervisors and superintendents, and adding the role of the coordinator. There's a lot of accountabilities to be kind of arranged there. And so that role of the coordinator is another new role that was new for us when we started to leverage operational data.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Mike. Greg, please go ahead.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that Mike said. And touching upon the continual improvement side of things, within Sudbury Operations, we have a business improvement team whose primary job is to implement operational excellence and continual improvement projects. You consider where they were able to come from a decade ago, where there was time studies in the field and you had to have people watching processes, and spreadsheets were the tools. And then we try to figure out how to make things sustainable after that. What we're able to do with acquiring data is get to that value proposition so much quicker than we ever could in the past. We're able to leverage, as Mike said, leverage the data models we have. So we have a good data store where we use new tools like Power BI to actually build out the KPIs that we need to track. And we're never actually getting into the spreadsheet world. We might be able to build some prototypes, but we're never implementing those spreadsheets. Now, the new way is to implement Power BI reports and reports that are sustainable from the start. And what that means is that our BI team is able to not, it was very tough to wire processes and to make them sustainable and then move on to the next, and with the confidence that the improvement process you put in place was going to be maintained. We we can hand over things to a process owner now, and that maintenance becomes a reality. And it allows us to have more ideas in the pipeline. It allows us to start getting a pull from our users, right? We're delivering faster. That means they're asking for more, and we can actually deliver those things. So really, being a data-centric company has allowed that. And I think going on to the system admin part of things, having those IT resources who are managing data, who are trying to figure out how to get data off equipment and use it reliably is so essential. And at Sudbury INO in our Onaping depth mine, over the next 2 years, we're bringing on over 100 battery electric vehicles, and every single one of those needs to be connected upon commissioning real time to pull battery information, primarily battery information, so we can run safely underground. But at the same time, we need the information around maintenance. We need the productivity information. We want to have that data feed back into our digital work management systems. So there's roles around that all over the place that we've never anticipated in the past, right? You have to have your OT roles, your IT roles, your system development roles, and obviously your digital adoption roles, so that we can actually coach and train people how to use this data.
Interesting. Thank you for those answers. It sounds a lot like the mining industry is shifting to a place where the jobs and the skill sets that are in it are high skill and also very IT centric, which means maybe it will change the definition of what we mean by mining. The next question is going to be around shift handovers, shift changes, and digital lineups. And the question is, how is operations data currently smoothing out things like shift changes? How is smoothing out those digital lineups to just facilitate shift handovers? Can you maybe just comment on that, please? Who wants to go first? Greg, go ahead.
Sure. So shift handover and lineups, it primarily is one of the priority areas we have with digital work management. So ensuring that the transition of a plan from engineering into operations into a 36-hour schedule that's achievable, and to have those priorities transition to the shifters, to the operators, that's the carrot with digital work management, to make sure we're running to priorities. How we make a lineup more effective is not having to have the shifters plan the day in their lineup meeting where there's so many things to worry about, right? You're trying to make sure your people are running safely, that they get their lineups, they understand where the equipment is on shift. If they're trying to figure out what to do at the same time, that makes it for a poor lineup process, and there's too many variables at that point in time at the beginning of a shift. So primarily with digital work management is working to resolve that, to make sure that the priorities are set. It's communicated digitally to the shifters. All they have to do is assign people and equipment to the priorities in the mine. So that's stage one. But the shift handover is a different animal, right? How do we get good status information from the cross shift, and using collaboration tools such as Microsoft Teams, for instance, to take pictures on a Teams channel so that we can actually see the heading, right? The shifter can actually see what's happening, using the telemetry data to understand where the shift has ended, whether it's a production mining task, so you know that how many buckets you have left in a stope, and that's proven out through the telemetry, or how many holes are still remaining for drilling, all those kind of things, where the status is. And it's a big challenge for the off-coming shifter to try to get all that information from their support people, their miners, and then transition that into the oncoming shifter so they can make their lineup reasonable. So we're not there yet, as I said, with the in-shift management, getting all that data off of equipment. That's to be, but the Microsoft Teams part of it is more real and more present, how we can actually deliver information to the shifter using collaboration tools.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mike, handing over to you. Question around shift handovers, shift changes, digital lineups. Please go ahead.
Yeah, +1 to Greg's answer there. That was pretty complete. So that narrows the scope of what I'll speak to, which is, yeah, I agree with Greg. Those are both highly pivotal and very compressed times in shift changes and lineup meetings. So prior to our first real serious use of operational data from a short interval control perspective, I attended a couple weeks worth of lineup meetings and got a feel for the types of things they talk about, how engaged people were. And what I've seen with this is a culture change whereby we've removed a lot of the logistics noise, like which machine am I taking, where am I going, how do I get there, all this stuff like this. It's all offloaded by the technology that we employed to provide the operational data we need. And the focus is more on performance now with the establishment of targets and the freeing up of that time from that logistics noise. So it's a very compressed and very pivotal and important time. So removing that noise is to me the most important thing, and enabling a culture of performance.
That's really interesting, Mike. And one of the things that I recently had discussions with our training department around, what is the shifter's role at our new mine? And because it's going to be electrified and all the equipment will be battery electric, what do they need to know how to run the shift? Location of equipment is so important, but it's not so easy to know the charge rates. They need to know the charge rates of the vehicle. Are all the vehicles charged to a point, or do we have to worry about that at the beginning of shift? If you assign a vehicle to somebody, don't assign a scoop that needs to be charged for the next half hour or needs a battery swapped when it's the highest priority stope to be mucked, right? So there's new skills that have to be given to the shifters as they have access to more data, right? So it has to be very the fear there is you overwhelm. There's too much data for them to make the decisions. We want to enable decisions, but not in a way that overwhelms the person receiving it. And during that condensed period of time, it's easy to overwhelm.
Good to that. All right. Thank you for the answer. The next question is a little bit general, but with a bit of focus on the long-term piece. So, what decisions require operations data, right? But thinking more so about in shift, you spoke a lot about short interval control, but what about that longer broad term utilization of data? What does that look like for utilization of this operational data? Mike, please go ahead.
Certainly, thank you. So, of course, it's roughly the same data that is used for both of those use cases. However, it's used by different people for different purposes, as you said. From a broader term perspective, focusing on continual improvement instead of the interactive. Like interactive shift, we mostly want to put that on autopilot. We want to have very standard responses to things. We want to know if this happens, this is what we would do. But from a continual improvement perspective, you want to be completely open-minded, because sometimes people will treat what I would say is a symptom rather than a root cause. And the data that you're storing for continual improvement can reveal when that's happening. So we have a process where we review it monthly, and offline there's further reviews that will inform our continual improvement roadmap. For example, if we see that our priorities are always changing, we will actually plan a workshop and get people who are doing those jobs into a room. We'll feed them kielbasa, cheese, and vegetables so that they're good listeners in the beginning. And then we'll let them vent, and we will then start to solution that venting and prioritizing. So it's really a cycle that fuels your continual improvement roadmap. Gotcha.
I'm going to ask a question about COVID-19, just something that just popped up on my screen here. So how has COVID-19 impacted the need and utilization of operations data?
From my perspective, it actually challenged our continual improvement roadmap, because we weren't going to site and conducting our workshops. So the gathering of operational data and utilizing of it allows people to work remotely better and to respect those gaps that you needed to have between people. So it really challenged us, and operational data is critical there. Greg?
Yeah, I think the same way. Like we obviously in Sudbury, we're not dealing with a remote mine, but there were periods of time during the pandemic where entire departments were pretty much at a standstill, because there'd be one or two people left in them. But the ability to work from home, the ability to deliver reports from home, digitalizing the work made a massive difference, right? So people, we were still able to deliver the KPIs that they needed to use, and it wasn't without its challenges. When you don't have people at work, it's very difficult. From an operational point of view, there were lots of times when crews were at a skeleton size as well. So the ability to prioritize work and ensuring that we have the top priorities hit, it didn't make it easy, but it ensured that if development heading was the number one priority, that in a skeleton crew you actually mined on that at that heading.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is about just constraints around the utilization of operations data, and to be more specific, what are some of the critical constraints that inhibit the utilization of operations data? Mike, please go ahead.
Well, most certainly this is going to vary by company, and you require supports high up in management, and one of those is attending the call now. Hi, Rob. First question is, how is your company staffed? If it's staffed just to keep the lights on, you're going to have a real hard time getting people to have time to implement these things to begin with. And you may need to scale utilizing people outside, or you may find, certain people in your functions that might be, extra knowledgeable or possess some skills in the areas of continual improvement, or even in your IT department. You can't underestimate the amount of people engagement you're going to need to make these things work.
Okay, thank you for that. Greg, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I again agree with Mike, and the other aspect is ensuring that the data is reliable, right? We talked about this in previous panels, but if you can't guarantee reliable data on a daily basis or a real-time basis, people lose faith really quickly that you can deliver the information that they need to make those. They become reliant on things very quickly. If you're successful, you need to have the infrastructure to be able to deliver that, whether it's the networks, whether it's the telemetry systems, the architecture, or whether it's the data models and the reporting tools. So that's very, very important. The other aspect is having the right workforce for digital adoption. If we're trying to change the way people work by having them become technically advanced in their jobs, you have to choose the right people. You have to choose the right adoption processes. I mean, there's aspects where it's easier to change in certain positions. If you're trying to change the engineering department and they're working on Surface most of the time, and we're bringing new tools to them, and they are in general, always really advanced as technically, digital adoption will come relatively easy. But if you're trying to get to a mining crew and you're trying to put phones in those people's hands for the first time, you need to staff that up to make sure that you have the right people in place to coach along the way, right? It's becoming easier and easier when almost everybody has a phone at home and they run apps at home and things like that. But at the same time, they all have their traditional jobs that they've done. So to try to implement change where they're communicating in a different way, or they're expected to review information on a periodic basis, it takes a long time for that to happen, and you have to have the right processes in place for digital adoption.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you for that. Next question is about prioritization of data utilization. So where does one start in terms of prioritization of data utilization, and what data should be collected first? And then the other sub question there is, what are the primary drivers for the selection of those priority areas?
I could start with the beginning of that, which would be, I think that everybody in the business can see some low-hanging fruits, but usually we know what the problems are, but we don't always respond because we might not know how much a particular problem is costing us. But from our perspective, it was absolutely invaluable for me to be active both on the digitization and technology sides as well as the process improvement side, because we conducted an assessment of our operations to understand which processes were most mature, where we had data available, where we had the most variation in those processes. And we determined where our primary bottleneck was, as well as tertiary constraints. And we decided which one to address first. So we knew that for us, it would be mucking, like moving the tons it was informed by that assessment. But we didn't do that first. What we did first was we gave the workers something that they needed so that we could get buy-in and generate a pull from the business. And for us, that was something as simple as give them the technology layer that visualizes everything moving in the mine so that they can find stuff that they lose. Because quite frankly, underground is a large, dark place with many hiding places. And we removed that source of frustration for them. And we tried to continue with removing sources of frustration for them by removing barriers. So absolutely give them something they need first. Then they'll come and ask for it.
Okay, thank you for that. Greg, please go ahead.
Good. So within Separate, I know we have two separate teams. One is the area that I work in, is the the innovation and technology team, which is doing a lot of work around digital transformation, and we have a business improvement team or a continual improvement team. So we were able to attack it from both places. And where we started from the innovation side is realizing we have to get better at the plan, do, check, act process. And there were a lot of prerequisites. We needed to bring in a platform for planning and scheduling that's will stand the test of time for on-up and depth mine. We needed to have short-term schedulers that were these tools that we could actually communicate well within meetings, within management routines. So for us, it was to become more reliable in how we worked, and then moving on into the short interval controller and shift management, which is our next phase. So we kind of have a now, next, and later approach to what we're doing. And the now part of it over the last year and a half to 2 years was all about building up these prerequisites so we can move into the in-shift part of it. But with that said, it wasn't that we weren't using operational data along the way. We talked about the operational data that can come off of applications. We have application for identifying work underground, so that you can go take pictures of a work location, a future work location, so it's easier to scope out how you prepare for that work location to be an active site for either the stope or a development heading or a level. So that goes right back in, that data feed goes right back into the plan, do, check, act cycle. From the continual improvement part, our nickel rim mine has had telemetry data coming off its scoops and drills for quite some time, and we've both Fraser mine and our nickel rim mine, we've had KPIs developed around first buckets and last buckets of the shift, and first delivery for our hauling trucks and last delivery of the shift. So these are the simple, they weren't so simple to set up because we needed the infrastructure, but you need to find the problem first, right? And I think Mike alluded to that, is you're looking for the inefficiencies in the process. If you want mucking to become better, if you want hauling to become better, what are the inefficiencies in the process? And try to automate that, right? You can do a time study, you can have somebody watching that and build out manual charts and so on. But using the location tracking data, using the telemetry data to actually get that first truck, last truck of the day was significant in improving the productive capabilities of Fraser Mine and NRS.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for those answers, guys. My next question is about the bi-directional data piece, and the question is, how are operations? At least, how do you envision operations utilizing bi-directional data to impact shift operations? Meg, you want to go first, or Greg?
Yeah, so I could discuss this from a data silo perspective. So as you acquire more operational data, there become more opportunities to save departments duplication of work. So for us, it was looking at our kind of long-term mine planning down to the medium-term planning, like the 3-month plan, for example, down to the monthly level. And then how could we share data between mine operations and engineering on the monthly plan and get that right down to the weekly and the shiftly level? So that's one thing that we're doing right now. Like the first step was to get the short-term plan generated using templates from the medium-term plan. And we have that now. The plan is in there. And there's all kinds of benefits from doing that, such as eliminating workspace conflicts, like guys gearing up and heading down there only to find someone else there. And we're trying to make that data more accessible. For example, so the plan comes from engineering through this system into mine operations. So we're now setting up mobile devices such that if you're looking at any vehicle or you're looking at a workspace, you can just punch it up on your cell phone and you can see all the tasks that are that piece of equipment or that workspace is scheduled for. So that also helps us to cycle through stopes faster, because we're trying to measure the lag between activities, and that's been successful in some other operations. And then conversely, we want to share that the actuals data back all the way to engineering without complete re-entry. So we're deploying mobile devices with an application that will allow them to report their production. And that's another dimension of removing noise from the operation, because we have these supervisors that have somewhat become kind of stuck in chairs at a computer at a refuge station, which is almost like an office for them. we're trying to free them from those chairs so that they can focus less on what work is being done and more on how the work is being done. So for us, success indicators that the supervisor's out of that chair, roaming around, has access to all the information they need while they're doing so. And they're mentoring people regarding safe work and regarding best practices.
Awesome. Thank you for that. The next question kind of builds up on a comment I had a little bit earlier on when you referenced manufacturing, that that we're trying to make mines more like manufacturing, how the manufacturing industry performs, especially when you look at things like assembly lines. What you see happening there is they're removing that variability in the operation. So the next question I have for you is around that whole variability in operations. So how are you using data to track the variability of operational activities? Mike, can I go first?
Sure. So we're kind of in transition here, but an example with short interval control is we take that data that is stored and we review it in the form of a Pareto monthly, and just looking at what our biggest barriers and opportunities are. But we're kind of transforming that now. We're just doing this now. We're implementing what I would call a management operating system that is based on layered reviews. And so we are actually taking a kind of a layered approach so that we're expanding the focus of the operation by making sure that people, like right up to the mine manager, aren't all focused on what happens every shift. So we may have a process where we're going to review monthly the variability in a process, and we're going to then cascade that down to the next level and say, okay, this is the strategy we're trying to fulfill. What is the area objectives that will get us there? And we're using the theory of constraints to determine what the goals should be in that area to meet the profit target or whatever. And then we cascade that down to the actual supporting initiatives that each department is working on. So tying together the organization through the various layers while ensuring the various layers in terms of job roles are focused on the types of things and the complexity that they should be focused on is key for us right now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Greg, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think managing variability is the essence of digital work management, and our focus within implementing at our NRS mine is to review our critical inventories around drilling, mucking, backfilling, development, and so on, and being able to look at our past performance through our actuals and seeing our schedule over the next 3 to 6 months to see, okay, are we comfortable with our inventories according to schedule, and if we're not, how can we change things over the next period of time to actually get all those inventories in a healthy level, right? So from a management perspective at our NRS mine, these reports are used on a weekly basis to see the changes in the inventories and so on. So that's a key factor. And the other reports are sort of we're calling them run control, and we're able to look in the past to see how a process is running. What is our capabilities within the process over the last 6 months? And looking at the forward-looking schedule, how are we delivering on that schedule over the next 6 months? So are we actually achieved, or is our schedule aligned with what we've been able to achieve? And if it's not, if we need to be more aggressive to meet our targets, what are we going to do about it? And it gives time to be able to react, right? You need to be looking at a macro level. So managing the variability at that level is key. And like Mike said, I think digital work management means you're taking those decisions, you're basing your priorities on it over the next 3 to 6 months, and that streams right down into your short-term schedule from your plan, medium-range plan into your short-range plan. It means that the priorities you've identified are actually aligned with the strategy of the mine as a whole, right? And really, once you get to that stage and you're working on the right things to deliver your year, then it gets down into the variability of the shift. And are we able to deliver on the next shift, on the next 36 hours of work? And as we get better and better at working to the priorities, that's where digital work management starts to shine. And you go from a mine that might be struggling to get to their production targets to one that's really comfortable in how they're operating, right? And it's an interesting process because mines obviously are not static environments, right? Things happen all the time, and as you go forward, you start being able to use the data to manage your delays, to have this bi-directional data within the shift, using collaboration tools like Teams, using Power BI to deliver the right KPIs to the right people for decision making, right? Like we want to be transparent in our minds, but at the same time, you want to ensure you're delivering the information to the appropriate roles for the decisions that they need to make, and not delivering data that is a nuisance or a distraction to the roles within the mine.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So my next question is really kind of looking back and saying there was a time when critical information would only get to you at the end of the shift, or it will get to you if someone happens to go up the cage sometime during the shift. And if you're lucky and you have ramp access, it might come around the ramp in shift before the shift is over. But now we're in a situation where the visibility of the information and the data that we have is almost at our fingertips for a lot of the operations in the mining industry. So the question I have for you both is, how has the visibility created by having access to operational data changed the culture of your operations?
So I think I'll go first, maybe, Mike. I think what it has done is it's first of all, it's increased, like we've talked about decision making, but what it's done is create pull within the operations for us, and there's pull within in helping manage the management systems around it. There's pull to acquire more data to make decisions, right? And I think that's ultimately where the culture is shifting. It's across the board, people looking for opportunities to use data to make improvements to their jobs and their processes.
Okay, thank you for that.
I agree with all that. I see more people open to data, like people in job roles that typically, they say, we don't need this, we don't need that from a technology perspective. Now they're actually open to data and they want to see what it says before they render an opinion. And I mentioned earlier that we're certainly seeing people more focused on performance right from the lineup meeting up to upper management. And from an upper management perspective, they just want to hear, are we winning or losing and what are we doing about it? And if that's not informed by data, then how much can we really trust that? Because human will be right a certain amount of the time, but the data can always help us to view things from a different perspective, such as a root cause perspective. So that's it for that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And while I'm just before I go to the next question, I just want to ask the audience if you have any questions for Mike and Greg, please write them in the chat box or email them to Neha, but maybe quickly put them in the chat box so they can answer those questions right here live for you. There's a question that came from the audience, and it was really more of a statement with a question at the end. So the statement is that many mining companies are not comfortable pushing data into the cloud due to obviously cybersecurity issues, which are real issues. So what are your thoughts on that? What idea around mining companies not being comfortable with pushing data into the cloud? Is that something that you've come across?
From my perspective, we started with that in 2012 when we realized that we weren't the best people to be running an email infrastructure. And so I saw some interesting debate at Ryerson University. I think it's called Toronto Metropolitan University now. And there were some people in the audience that asked some questions that I thought had checkmated the people who were running their programs there. And their answers and my subsequent learning helped me to understand that the cloud is actually more secure than we could ever afford to be. When you think of consolidating of technology on sites, something like servers or whatnot, if you've got separate solutions in each of your operations in each site, it's costing you a lot of money, and you can't really afford redundancies that you could if you consolidated and put servers from various sites together in one facility. I see the cloud in one respect as increasing the capability, making that which is not financially feasible on our own, financially feasible in the cloud. For example, like Google, in their data centers, if you have a rogue administrator that wants to access the data, they can't, because it could be one chunk of your data is in one data center, another chunk is in another data center. We could never possibly afford this. And the way they track the encryption at rest and the encryption in transit, like, we just don't have the resources to do that. So to me, mining companies, we need to focus on the last mile, which is our part. So one thing that we did is we made absolutely certain that every single user profile in our organization, even if it's a service account that is just used to run a specific piece of software, they're all enrolled in multi-factor authentication. So that because social engineering is rampant, And we recently increased our password complexity rules because the ability to brute force, like if someone gets into the network and they're able to kind of intercept credentials, then they can start hitting it over and over again without disabling the account. So for me, it was absolutely multi-factor authentication is absolutely important, and also having the rule that we're not going to replicate our security credentials outside of our company. We're not going to open our firewall to allow some external party to authenticate in our systems. There are technologies out there that allow you to have an isolating layer that you share something that you know in order to get authenticated. So for me, we're more secure than we could ever be because of the cloud. And the company needs to make a decision with regard to things like the Patriot Act, whereby the government can request access to data and they don't even really have to tell you about it. Canada has its own version of the Patriot Act. Quite frankly, our focus there is through records management. Don't keep more data than you need, because you'll wind up spending a lot of money on lawyers just sifting through it in cases where you need to. So in my mind, cloud is more secure than we could ever be.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for that. Greg, please go ahead. Let's see.
Well, I think I would agree with all those statements, and there is challenges still, not so much from Glencore from a tech standpoint, but there are legal issues that you do have to watch out for. Like we have to account for what data we put on the cloud. But I think, not talking about security so much, I think it's essential going forward, right? And like Mike said, running email from the cloud is obviously beneficial, but running Teams, running Power BI, even niche applications that we run, the cloud versions, the vendors maintain the cloud versions. The on-prem versions, I don't want to say you get the B team, but often you get the B team in the support, and it's a requirement. And I think the question was from Yan, and his question was around using clouds for data storage, and I think that's the next step that we will need to get to, because what it gives is easily accessible data for the people that need it, right? So whether it's from a mobile device that's off of your network, or whether it's other vendors who you want to give easy access to your data, whether it's OEMs for equipment, or whether it's data analytics companies who can easily access the data, do their analytics work from a cloud data store. I think it's essential to be able to do that. You can turn around solutions so much faster with that methodology than trying to figure out firewall access for a vendor so that they can actually analyze data on-prem. And frankly, we just don't have the horsepower to manage the data in that respect, right? We don't want to be building out an infrastructure for AI. We want to use a cloud environment for building up that infrastructure for people that know how to do it properly.
Gotcha.
Something to add to that, if I may. And that is, I do have a background. I was an IT infrastructure architect, and at some point, I made the decision, like I could see the cloud coming, and I thought to myself, if I want to have challenging work in this area, I need to make a decision to leave the customer and join the service provider. But that's not entirely true. There is a lot of work to be done, and your IT teams must absolutely remain focused on this. Just because you've outsourced the storage of data doesn't mean that you're any less responsible to ensure that it's done right. What you have is you have more time to ensure it's done right. So instead of focusing on how much disk space is on servers or what RAID type you're using on your storage arrays, you should focus on things like, where do we have data that's unencrypted at rest and in transit? What should our standards be? How can we detect violations to those standards? I think it just enables you to do a better job of IT infrastructure. But too many resources, they're tempted to say, well, they're responsible for that now, so I'm going to focus on something else. No, you need to make sure it's done right.
Gotcha. Yes, thank you for that. One of the conversations that came up during when we were preparing for this panel was the whole idea around data and things like preventative maintenance. So my question is, how has operations data impacted the whole world of maintenance? If you can maybe just comment on that. Greg, you want to go first?
Sure. So we've at our nickel rim site, and we've had telemetry data coming off of our LHD fleet almost since the beginning of NRS, which started in 2009. We've been able to not necessarily go down the path of advanced analytics, but truly getting data off for visibility to our maintenance crews. So whether it's tire pressures and building out maintenance strategies around tires and tire wear has been a good example. Looking at vehicle performance around getting engine hours automatically off things. So there's the maintenance. We haven't gone down the path yet of doing AI and trying to rebuild a maintenance strategy around advanced analytics, but providing visibility into how equipment is running and reports like that has been something that the maintenance crews have worked with. But we haven't yet. I know some mining companies have gone down the path of using AI, machine learning to redo their maintenance strategies. We haven't gone down that far yet, but for us, it's not a focus at this point. I think the focus and like Mike, our focus is around productivity gains with it. And not to say we're not going down that path. We know we need to for on-upping depth mine, especially around the battery, the charging strategies and the battery maintenance. We do need to pull data. Provide that data back to OEMs for analytics so that we can actually manage those batteries well.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Mike, please go ahead.
I agree with what Greg said. Helping our maintenance teams to better understand how the equipment is being used could lead to insights such as practices that are causing damage or increasing our maintenance costs. And the tire pressure monitoring is a good example of that. I was at our Peruvian operations recently and saw how that team developed a screen that sits between operations and maintenance, and they can see all the machines that have issues in the top of the screen and all the ones they've addressed in the middle of the screen and the rest that haven't had issues in the bottom of the screen. And something simple like that can just cause, faster detection response cycle. So I think that's good. One thing that I hate to admit it, but in some way it seems like maintenance is usually second fiddle for us in terms of like my job role. And complementing their processes with new technologies. I'd like to undo that someday for sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think in our group, Charles, as well, within our team, we have a person who's responsible for asset performance and asset maintenance and so on. And they're building up the processes. And what we're doing is creating the baseline and creating a well-established, baseline of processes that will enable AI and those things later on. But we're just we're not at that place right now. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit within the maintenance areas around access to data, like Mike said, knowing how things are running, like getting into the advanced analytics of things that there's some areas that obviously you can add value, but I think there's bigger value in ensuring your processes are running right.
Gotcha. If you go ahead, Mike.
To the AI point, we did try a predictive failure solution, and we decided to target our paste plant ejection pumps with that because it's quite critical to our operation and backfilling. And that was 3 years ago, and at the time, we kind of lacked, I would say, subject matter expertise on the actual hardware that we're using, because all the AI solution really did for us at that point in time was help us to understand how we're using the pumps a little better. We saw the ambient temperature when they weren't being used, and we were able to kind of understand what failure looks like a little better. For example, it wasn't this heated, noisy, smoky thing about to catch on fire. It was actually something that was drawing less electricity because the impellers were wearing because of the particulate in the paste flow. So it helped us answer some of the 5 whys, but at that time it didn't help us to predict when failure was going to occur. And I understand the goal in this area would be to apply the right frequency of maintenance. Like maybe we're maintaining our equipment a little too proactively. We haven't gotten to that level yet at our operation.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. There's a question from the audience from Gurpreet. And the question is, with more BEVs joining the mining fleets, do you anticipate the data handling for preventative maintenance will be different than what it is today?
I think this question is probably directed to me because we are moving to an entirely electrified fleet at our on-upping depth mine. So certainly our number one priority is to get the data for battery management and charge management and so on. So obviously there's a whole separate powertrain and so on with battery electric vehicles, but there's a lot of things that are the same as they always were, around hydraulics, around tire management, those kind of things. And one of the things that we'll be able to do that we can't do right now is we'll have a network at our Onaping depth mine that allows us to pull this data. So I can't give you a solid answer yet how we'll maybe do preventative maintenance in that fleet, but we will expand the usage of data for the maintenance teams going forward.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So we have one more question for you, and this question is more future facing. So feel free to even put your wish list in your answers. So how will operations data impact mining in the next 5 to 10 years? And also, what's on your wish list for the mines of the future for how we can better leverage the utilization of operations data? Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll kick it off, and Greg can add the polish on this one.
Okay.
I foresee the mining industry heading down the same path as what manufacturing did, which is that execution of mining processes will continue to become more predictable and measurable, just as it has done for manufacturing. And some of the things I would like to see, and Greg, I hope you're sitting down for this, I would like to see standards in the telemetry data. So all the vendors, I'd like to see them have standards for how they report that data, because I've been trying to spend like IT hours isolating our end users from differences between the different vendors. So I tried to present a layer in the middle. Like one vendor is going to give you a log that the machine entered this status at this time. The other one's going to give you maybe a shift summary or something like this. But that would remove the logistics noise from my job and get those equipment speaking the same language. And I know there are some bodies out there that are trying to gain some momentum in that area. Another thing I'd like to see is, as we rely on technology more, like we're actually up into health and safety now. We have, systems that are like Google Maps for the mine, and we're able to see other vehicles approaching and stuff like this before the headlights appear. I would like to see things that would help to ensure that we have a functioning network. And I worry about the backbone going up the shaft. I'd like to see very different communications technologies become more feasible in mining. One that I had a lot of hope for was like through the earth technology. So it's, if we have some kind of shift of ground, it can break fiber, it can break coax. But if we could use something wireless through the earth, that would be really something special. The worst thing is you expend a lot of energy and dollars having a system that is going to guide your mine rescue team by being able to see exactly where people are underground, that it works 99.9% of the time, but the 0.1% that you needed, it wasn't there. That is my worst nightmare. The other thing I would like to see more machine learning experts facing mining challenges. I'd like to see modeling of the shift. Maybe we can get rid of the intervals. We have 3 intervals during our shifts where we look at how we're doing. Are we winning? What do we need to do in response? I'd like to see the shift modeled that predicts where we're going to be during the shift. And of course, I'd like to see condition-based maintenance so that we can spend the right amount of money and address the sources of additional maintenance.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Mike. Certainly we'll summarize that wish list and get it out to all the vendors so they can start to create some solutions. But Greg, please go ahead.
So I'll add on in a few places. One of the things that we see in our fixed plants, our smelters and our concentrators is the idea that we have our process engineers, and they're our data scientists at the plants, right? And they're able to comb through data, make improvement processes and so on. We don't have that at the mines right now. And once we get this steady stream of reliable data, to be able to bring data scientists in, to be able to bring those business improvement resources in, to have that better continuous improvement model that our smelters and mills have enjoyed, because they have, for decades have had a continuous stream of solid data. I think that's where we need to go, and we'll be able to get to the problems and the solutions much faster at that point. But I think we've talked a lot about how this operational data will be instrumental in digitizing the process from a plan, do, check, act, from a systems process, from an assurable control process. But this data and interacting with equipment and enabling further enabling automation underground. So when we get to the point of automating the development cycle, the access to data is going to be so key. So whether it's integrating LiDAR scans within our equipment so that they can run more effectively underground in automation, there's automation carries a lot of challenges, and when you can look at all the conditions within a mine to make automation run better, that'll be an interesting challenge, so that we can further automate the mine, run safer at the mine, be able to run between shifts, to be able to use drone technology to be able to do better scans of our stopes and better scans of our roadways, to ensure that they're in good conditions, things like that. So there's a lot of areas that once you open up the ability to retrieve data, I think that vendors and OEMs will come to the table with so many solutions for us to start effectively running our mines like a manufacturing site or manufacturing plant. And because of this, going back to where we started last year with Beyond Digital presentations, it all goes back to, can we effectively get the data out of the mine, off of equipment, off of sensors throughout the mine, off of location of people and equipment, for safety, for having a good solid system for collision avoidance, all these things that once we are actively being able to reliably retrieve all this data, we can start running our mines like a manufacturing plant.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Greg and Mike, for your sharing your thoughts. I think the verdict is very clear here, right? Operations data is improving decision making, which is resulting in us having more productive operations, safer operations, and altogether improving the quality of work of people in the mining industry. So guys, thank you for your time. Looking forward to connecting with you again. To the audience, thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to having you rewatch this if you wish, and we'll be providing that information to you shortly. Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everybody.